Hey everyone, and welcome to the Uncorked Corner podcast, where we cover the full spread of food and beverage industry topics. My name is Bianca, PR and marketing professional by day and food and wine connoisseur by night.
And my name is Nick, an accountant with a passion for barbecue, beer, and whiskey. Our guest today is co-founder of Smith Devereux Wines, wine director at San Francisco Magazine, and musician Ian Devereux White.
During this episode, we discuss what makes Smith Devereux Wines and its co-founders strike a chord with their audience. From creative partnerships with artists to the passion to make great wine accessible to everyone, Ian explains what gives Smith Devereux Wines their award-winning quality and individuality.
On that note, let's get into the podcast. You want to walk us through a little bit about your background story on how you guys founded the winery? I was on the website and I saw it looks like you guys have a pretty unique story of meeting each other and getting everything going. So I'd like to hear about that.
Absolutely. Well, in order to understand that, I think that I should probably start with the fact that I was born on a rainy day. No, I'm just kidding. Take it all the way back. So what happened was I still am the wine director for San Francisco Magazine, but I was a writer for Lonely Planet Travel Guides. And I finished that job, and the president of Lonely Planet moved over to a magazine in San Francisco where I was living. And there was nobody at that magazine that was writing about wine, or at least not doing it in an accessible kind of way. And so he said, "Hey, dude, I know you're done with Lonely Planet, you're done with writing, but I also know you're dating a girl up in the wine country. While you're up there, would you mind writing about the wine country?" He's like, all right, well, I got nothing else on my plate right now. It sounds like a good way to get to know it. Well, fast forward 8 years, I've written for Wine Enthusiast, I've written for even Psychology Today about the mental aspects and the health aspects of wine. I've taught classes, I've traveled all over the world, and I've been to thousands, and I mean that, of wineries at that point. And it was a beautiful way to transition into the wine community, because everywhere I went, I was writing about them, and then people would go visit or they'd buy wines, and this new community was gaining access to sort of insider knowledge. And I got to use what I learned at Lonely Planet, and through that vibe and that writing style, I was able to use that to support the wine community. So about 9 years in, I'd had a really close friendship with this guy named John Chouchard, who was a farmer. His parents started Chouchard Vineyards in the 70s, and he grew up farming. He grew up driving tractors, and just a good dude, sharing an office. And I was interviewing somebody in his tasting room, actually, John Anthony, and he asked me, "How long have you been writing?" The person I was interviewing asked, and I said, "I guess I've been writing for about 9 years." And he goes, "Wow, just telling other people's stories for 9 years?" It's like, "Ooh, dude, you're a jerk." I've never really thought about it that way, but yeah, I guess so. And so I went to John that very day, moments later actually, and said, "Dude, I want to buy some of those grapes that you farm, and I want to make a wine. I'm ready to start doing something." And he said, "You're going to lose your shirt, dude." I was like, "Oh, all right, not my day." And then he said, "I have a better idea. Let's start a winery together. I'm farming all these vineyards." I think at that point he was farming like 50 or 60 vineyards around Napa Valley and all over the place. He said, "Let's buy back some of the grapes and let's start a winery and make wines from vine to bottle. We won't have to pay a mortgage because we'll be farming other people's properties. We'll be getting paid to farm the properties, so our margins will be better, and we can make the wines at, a small family-owned winery, so we'll do it all ourselves." And that was how this all began. And it was the first vintage was 2012, and we made it with a musician named Matt Carney and had a deal with Whole Foods that was both a blessing and a curse, because we were by no means ready to launch into 50 states, and the intricacies of getting distribution in all those states, it was incredibly challenging. But luckily I had a partner, this guy who was Matt Carney's manager, and became a dear friend, and his name is Steve Smith. And so he was on Matt Carney's side of the deal, and John and I were on the vineyard side of the deal. And so as we finished that up, it became clear that Steve and I were going to have a friendship that lasted a lifetime. I had been in a band my entire life, and still was at that point, called High Noon, and still am, and we play in the tasting room. And so Steve was tired of being in the music industry, and John's other businesses were so consuming, he wasn't able to be the kind of partner at that point. This is about 3 years now, in that he thought wanted to be in the beginning. And so I said, "Dude, I want to bring somebody else on, somebody that can travel, somebody that can be there all the time. You, Steve, keep doing the farming, you keep doing what you're already in your natural course of business, but I want to bring somebody else on." He said, "Do it." And so I brought on Steve Smith, and that's when we became Smith Devereux. And Steve's background, 19 years in the music industry, And also, I mean, he signed people ranging from, let's see, like The Fray, John Mayer, Matt Carney, all kinds of wonderful bands. And so he had this amazing career. And what he was able to do is marketing for all of those different bands and all that really beautiful, stylistic, and just business planning for such different artists all under the same thing, very much like Different Wines. And so he came on and he was an amazing asset. He lives in Chicago, so easy to travel to a lot of places as well. And so we joined forces. And when we started designing our tasting room, we put in a recording studio, guitars on the walls, music 3 nights a week. We called it Jam Cellars because that's John's other brand. And in the wine industry, you can't write anything off that goes in or on the bottle, tax-wise, but you can write off marketing expense like building a tasting room. And since Smith Devereux was just getting started, we decided to call it Jam Cellars, still make it with all the music and all of the kind of ideas that we came up with together for the Smith Devereux tasting room, but call it Jam. That way his company could run it and we could sell our wines there. And so that was kind of the genesis of what brings us to where we are now. We still farm a lot of the vineyards we use. We do have relationships with some wonderful families that are growing grapes for us. We do buy certain blenders. We trade barrels with friends. We buy barrels from friends and they buy barrels from us. I'm actually just got a call from this dude who's got some killer Merlot over in Coombsville, and I love Coombsville Merlot. And so I think if all goes well, I'll trade him a couple barrels of Cab for a couple barrels of Merlot, and maybe we'll do something special for our wine club. So that's what brought us all together. Until COVID, we had bands 3 nights a week. My band played frequently. Steve is still actively managing bands, including my favorite musician, Brett Denon, who we make a wine with. We also have a whole series of wines called the Artist Series wines that we make with musicians and other people of influence, and almost always for charity. And that is it.
Awesome. That's really cool. So let's get a little bit into the wines now. You said that you work with a bunch of vineyards around you and different families and stuff. So in your regional area, is everything you use and put into your wines right there? Or do you outsource from different places to get different maybe flavor profiles to go into your different wines?
It depends on the wine. So our Napa Valley Cab, no. So right now we're farming a vineyard in Oak Knoll. It's also where I give vineyard tours. And so that is our Cabernet, and that will be moving forward as well. It's a wonderful family. We do everything. Our single vineyard Merlot, we farm at Davidson Ranch. John's been farming that vineyard for 15 years or something. And so those, we have complete control. We do everything from farm to bottle. Now we work with a family in Mendocino for our California Red Blend, and another family up in near Clear Lake, actually, for the Sauvignon Blanc White Blend. And then we work with a group in Solano County, over in Yolo County, actually, You Only Live Once County, where we get our rosé grapes from. And so for our California wines, we work with people that we know year after year, so we can achieve consistency. For the Napa Valley wines, that's all us. And so like in Mendocino, though, because that's a wine that we love and we're going to make, we met the Ravino family and we said, well, it's McConnell, they go by Ravino, but that's the name of the business. And so we met them and we wanted to make this amazing Syrah because they had this big, bold, chocolatey Syrah. And it was just awesome. But they didn't have anything else there that we wanted. So we ended up buying some Zinfandel to pair with that Syrah. And then that was what we thought was perfect until they told us they had some Cab on their property too, that they were farming the same way that we needed things farmed. And so we checked that out. We blended it in too. It's like, dude, this is awesome. And so now the foundation of the wine is still the Syrah. Buy it from the same plot, the same area, the same vineyard every year, same family, same thing with the Cab Franc that we get. And then the Zinfandel, depending on what that yields, we will buy the Zinfandel from anywhere from Paso Robles up to, really kind of anywhere that, as long as their farming practices are sustainable and they're thoughtful about what they're doing, we're willing to work with them for the Zinfandel, because it just depends on what that year does. Is the Cabernet, is the Cab Franc spicy? Is the, is the Syrah overly dark chocolate? Is there too much dark chocolate in it? And rather than messing with that, what we'll do is we'll buy a Zin that has a little more raspberry to it versus blueberry. And clearly those are going to have extremely different flavor orientations and profiles and bring a totally different game to what we're making in that wine. And so it's really fun to be able to have those two fundamentals that we know where they're coming from every year, the same thing, and then be able to bring in something special in order to balance it out.
And going around and tasting all those different wines and making sure they match up to what you're looking for must be the most fun part, right?
The most fun part is sharing it with people. That part is really cool to see what you can get. But man, you got to kiss. Oh man, you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you get prince or princess. And so it can be really fun. We have a consulting winemaker named Brett Adams who does a lot of the sort of preliminary work, and he's awesome. The guy's just great. He takes the flavor profiles that we've created for many years, and over the last 2 years has improved all of them, and worked with our grape contracts, worked with all of our kind of system, and been able to do just an incredible job of continuing but improving what we've done. And so he will kiss most of the frogs and then bring the reasonably good looking frogs and then we all kiss those and then pick a prince. But it's a lot of it in Napa Valley. Things are different. I've traveled a lot to Italy to write about wines, and over there is an art to it. It's sort of like you've got your canvas, and you're going to paint on the canvas, and you're going to see what happens as you go, and all those broad strokes and craziness, and you're going to end up with a little splatter here. That's kind of the way. Not all of them. I don't want to say that this is all Italians, but this is sort of the idea of that historic artisanal winemaker of Europe, and even some of the bacterial and microbes that can be found in their cellars of hundreds of thousands of years or whatever it is. If you're in Georgia, that do add flavors to their wines. That's part of the uniqueness. The way it's celebrated there, and over here it's such a science. It's crazy how different it is here. I mean, it's really hard to find a poorly made wine. It's easy to find a wine you don't like, but it's hard in Napa Valley to find a poorly made wine because we have so much science and we have such specificity. And at some level, I think sort of to a detriment in certain cases, because you start to be surrounded by these ubiquitous, similar, flavor profiles. Why? Because we all know exactly what to plant in that soil, when to pick, all these other things. And then you say, well, the hilltops, which are totally different from the valley or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, the differential that comes from really the winemaking, from the barrels you choose, that's really actually these days what makes the biggest difference.
Speaking of art, you have the artist series. Is there something special about that? Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what that means? I'm looking at the Vacationer bottle right now, and it's very cool. And I saw another one on your site, and it's colorful. It's very summery, I think. Something that resonates well right now. We'd love to hear more about that.
Thank you. Yeah, so the artist series actually began with artists, meaning, well, we kept it broad because it started with musical artists and only musical artists. And so that to this point is primarily what we're doing, is we're making wines with musicians. And Brett Denon, my favorite musician, painted that, and he's the one who we made that with, who made make a wine with Amy Hanaiali'i, who is the official musician of the Hawaiian Islands, and she's a musical artist as well, but more than that, in terms of what she does for that culture. We made wines with Andrew McMahon of Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, formerly of Jack's Mannequin, and each one of those has a donation component to it. So those are all musical artists that we work with. Matt Carney, we make verse and chorus. We've always avoided working with too big of celebrities, and the reason is we don't want to get lost in the mix of celebrity wines. What we want to do is make wines with people who are making music and have an audience that they connect with. Our motto is every bottle tells a story. We want to be a part of your story. We want you to be a part of ours. And when you get to a celebrity status, that's not really true. You become part of somebody's story, but they're not a part of yours other than as a general part of the audience. And so we work with musicians who are who are a part of their fans' stories. And so that's been a beautiful thing. They come and play in the tasting room. Now, Brett Denon also happens to be an amazing painter. So he painted the charismatic fool, the Vacationer, and the new Sloth Vacationer that you're seeing all over Instagram.
Incredible.
But I also really want to work with artists for the Smith versus Devereux project, where Steve Smith makes his own wine, I make my own wine. We put it in a box set and send it out to our wine club to vote for which one's better. I worked with, my favorite artist, Aiden Kingren, out of Sonoma, and used a painting of his that now hangs in my music room. And so I called that wine the music room. Steve actually had his nephew paint something for him. So in that, we've got an artist and an artist, I suppose. But the artist series is also built to include artists of a huge range. So that can be painters, it can be musicians. I think that word at some level has been stretched so far that it's, at some level you can even look at a lot of athletes perhaps even as artists in their own way. So the artist series is something that we really want to continue to use as our way to meet new people, to be involved in the musical community, to give something extra to our wine club, and also at a certain level, and I guess at a major level, make it our give back component. Each one of those brands associated with a different cause. We made a wine with Van An Wyn, who is currently, I believe, still the top selling classical pianist in the world. And she's Vietnamese. And so that wine, the proceeds, that was called Pop Alchemy, same as title as her album. That wine was made with a donation component for Viet Dreams. And so that's the exciting part about that, is we get to have different labels, different bottles, different musicians, and different causes we support.
So
That's
how
very
much
cool.
does the artist actually have of an input going into the wine, the nuts and bolts of the winemaking, picking what they're going to put their sort of brand on and name on, and then choosing, you said, the charity that it's going to?
Way more than I would like to give them, to be perfectly honest. It's a pain in the ass. It's a big range. We have had situations where we had an artist come and taste all of our wines and say, dude, this is my perfect wine. I love this wine. We're like, really? All right, well, we can scrape some labels off, and you can create a new label and a new story, and we'll talk about why you love this wine and why we made a special edition label with you as opposed to a wine from start to finish. Whereas somebody like Brett Denon, where we're actually out like at A's games in the parking lot tasting different wines and doing blending sessions at our tasting room and visiting vineyards and other wineries to see what they're doing together. So it is a broad range of basically putting a label on a bottle with somebody and raising some money, all the way to specifically sourcing vineyards and going through blending sessions. We're making a wine right now for Moscato's Italian restaurant in near Sedona in Arizona, and they flew out, the two owners, who, by the way, that's like my favorite restaurant in the country, but they flew out and we went through an incredible blending session, and we're doing a Cabernet and a Cabernet Malbec blend. And we were very lucky in that they loved our cab, but we had to blend a couple different things together that we make in order to get there. So there's almost always a blending session. There's almost always a pretty serious conversation, and rarely, I guess it's only been once that there just happened to be a wine that we put a label on, and even then it was still there was still there's a lot of collaboration even in building the label, planning the events, things like that.
You mentioned that that's a new one. Oh.
What's that?
You mentioned that's a new wine that you have coming out. Are there any other new wines that you have coming out in the near future that you're excited about?
Oh, so pumped about a couple of things that are coming out. We've got our 2017 Ibex. Ibex is our single vineyard Merlot, and at some level it's what put us on the map. It's also the vineyard that I was talking about that's right near my home, that we farmed first, that got us into this. And so that's coming out, that I'm really pumped on. We just released the new white blend, which has been awesome to see that all over the place. People just love that citrusy, crisp, easy drinking, serve it super cold white blend. Seeing the limited edition Sloth Vacationer out there, I've been pumped on. So those are all new releases. But the Ibex 2017, Ibex Single Vineyard Merlot, that comes out fall. Super excited about that. It's by far, in my mind, the best of the single vineyard Merlots we've ever made. I think we finally nailed exactly what we want this to be. We grow and make that Merlot just like other people in Napa Valley make a Cab. Merlot is a softer, more floral, more fruit-forward grade than Cabernet. But when you grow it this way and you treat it this way, it gets a lot of the structure, a lot of the personality, and a lot of the spice that you'd expect of a Cab. So it's just more drinkable, it's more playful, but it still has that robust Napa Valley flavor that you're expecting. So really excited about that. And then we do a lot of very small projects just for our wine club, and one that's coming out, we had some 2014 Pinot, and we made a limited release project with a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket from the 90s. I highly recommend checking them out. They're awesome. Special Dosiana. There's this album, Fly From Heaven, as the name of the Pinot that we made with them, but Fall Away. Some really cool music back then, but we still had some leftover Pinot. And we weren't sure what to do, and I decided I wanted to start blending it. I wanted to make a Pinot blend, and everybody said that's not something people do. And I said that's definitely something I want to do then. Why don't people do that? I said, oh, because Pinot lovers love Pinot, and people who don't like Pinot don't like Pinot. I was like, that's like the worst reason I've ever heard not to do something. Is because nobody, come on now, let's make a wine people are going to want to drink because it tastes good, not because they're not used to hearing it. Like this is an opportunity as far as I'm concerned. Let's build something. Just like when everybody said you're crazy to keep making that Merlot, you should plant that to Cab and sell it for $200. It's like that, or make a name for ourselves in the Merlot world and sell it for 45 and get everybody into the wine club with that wine. And so what we made was a wine that is going to be Pinot. It's 56% Pinot, and it's got Cab, Syrah, and Merlot blended into it. And so it's a pretty wicked blend, and everybody kept talking about how that was breaking the rules. And I said, we're not breaking the rules, we're just creating a little mischief. And so we named it Mischief.
Nice.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that wine club that you keep mentioning.
Oh, have I mentioned that? No. Our wine club is, for us, really special. It's the heart and soul of this winery, and so we're always making custom projects for them, including a brandy that we're making for the holidays this year. It's
exciting.
Pumped on it. So we're partnering with the Napa Valley Distillery, Arthur Hartunian, who's a dear friend of mine, and I did this together. It spent most of its life, it was spent on bourbon barrels. I collected bourbon. It was sort of my passion for a long time. I created bourbon collections for people, and so it spent most of its time in bourbon barrels. Then we moved it to port barrels, and then 2 years in a still wet single vineyard Merlot barrel of ours. And it came out tasting a lot like a bourbon, I'm gonna be honest with you, and it doesn't surprise me too much because you're driving towards that palate. But you also do get some of the oak, some of the juiciness, some of the Merlot in there too. And so pumped on that for the wine club. That's just one example of the kind of cool stuff we're doing. Our wine club also gets 20% off all purchases. And that is a lot. And that's a lot more than most people offer. And they get 6 bottles 3 times a year, a total of 18 bottles. Always something special, always a new release in each one of them, and then a blend of other things that we think are seasonally perfect. For example, the summer's one was 2 rosés, 2 white blends, a cab, and a 3 red blend. All perfect barbecue wines or grilling wines. And we put that together for a reason. It's the first time people had tried the white blend of the rosé, though, so something new. So you're always getting something new. You're always getting 6 bottles. But you also have the choice to choose whatever you want. You get your email, you get to go right in and select. If you want 6 bottles of rosé, you can have 6 bottles of rosé. If you want 6 bottles of cab, you can do that, or you can upgrade to a case. Whatever you choose, your shipping's only $1. So you're getting 20% off, only $1. You choose whatever wines you want in your wine club, and then you have direct access, for better or for worse, to me. And I go out in the vineyards and I do FaceTimes with people. I do Zoom calls. I do whatever, I help people pair the wines. I talk to them. I spend a lot of time on Instagram and on this, just developing relationships and letting them know that there is a person behind this brand that is barely paying himself, that's out in the vineyard, that's hosting people in the vineyard, that I didn't make a bunch of money in technology and then come to this. I took my vast fortune from writing for publications and I put this into the company, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to connect to people. It's my favorite part. And so the wine club are people we connect with all the time. Everybody got to design a custom Smith Devereux hat this year, which was really exciting. Everybody got all these colors. I can't wait to see all of them. Another really cool thing that I'm very proud of for our wine club, and this was Steve Smith's idea. He, when COVID hit, we're like, what are we going to do? So we made dollar shipping for everybody on 6 bottles or more straight to their door, because we knew people didn't want to leave, but they definitely were going to want to drink. What is the old adage? You drink in the good times, you drink more in the bad times. And so we did that, but then we decided we want to do something else. I want to do something special for our wine club. So everyone in our wine club, we sent them to me an email and said, pick anybody you want. We're going to send them a bottle of wine on us. We're going to pay for the wine and we're going to pay for the shipping. And everybody in our wine club got to buy somebody they loved a bottle. And a lot of them then Zoomed and drank the bottle together. A lot of them just surprised a family member. I think some of them bought them for themselves and tried to trick us and put a different address on it. But whatever, it didn't matter. And that brought us so close to so many people. And we did for Mother's Day for our wine club only, we did wine and chocolate pairings. And one guy bought 4 sets for the 3 siblings and then their mom for Mother's Day. And then we all did a Zoom together where we did a wine and chocolate pairing. And it was really about their family, since they couldn't be together for her birthday as they planned. It's a way for them to connect and to talk and to experience something together at the same time, even though they couldn't be together. And I was there to sort of guide them through it. But really, I was mostly just a word here and there, a question answered when needed, but mostly I got to see this family connect in that way over, this wine and chocolate pairing that I put together with a local chocolatier, Kohler. They're awesome. And man, that's really been the beauty of this wine club, is doing things like that, connecting with people in such a special way. So that's the wine club.
That's really great. And you talk a lot about experiences. I've seen some awesome photos on your Instagram, as you mentioned, and everyone should follow you guys because photos are top notch. But I saw that you have your sons in the vineyard, which I think is so great. What would you say that experience has been like?
More than anything, I think it's a great experience for them because, my wife is born and raised in the vineyard, and so for her, she gets to see them growing up in the same place they did, doing the same things. But it's so cool to get them out on the quads, to get them out there, to show them, even though they don't really experience the wine yet, to show them where it all begins and where it ends, show them the farming, show them the hardship of that. But also, they're out there where we have our tomatoes and we have the rest of the things that we're farming. And like my 2-year-old Sonny wanders around the house, and like if you don't know where he goes, you know exactly where to find him. He's going to be in the cherry tomatoes, and his face is going to be stuffed with these things. And so the agricultural aspect of growing them up in a community, raising them in a community where they're able to see these farmers, these people who care so much about the earth and people who are making something that comes directly from the earth, I think is really meaningful. What lacks for them, I think, in this experience is a little bit of cultural diversity. It's really hard to explain to them the beauty of something, or the sadness or hardship. I think all of that probably of something like Black Lives Matter. And I can't pretend to understand what Black people are going through right now, but what I can tell you is that I lived in Oakland, and that for a number of years, and that my stepbrother, his cousins are half Black, and that my experience of growing up is with a lot of different cultures, and to the point where, I lived in San Francisco, my dad and I lived there, and so I'm used to that, whereas for them, they don't have that experience up here. And so I think that's what's missing, but at least in the vineyards, they're able to see the beauty of agriculture and of, the diversity of what we see. And in a time like COVID, I mean, I understand people are trapped in apartments all over the place, and we're trapped on quads riding around the vineyards. And so grateful, so blessed to be in that scenario now too. But, kids, I heard somebody say yesterday that the best moment of his life, it was his 40th birthday, and he came up for a hang in the vineyard. And he said the best moment of his life was when his son was old enough to really hug him back. That first hug where like the kid really embraced him, head on the shoulder. And he's like, that's why I'm having my birthday party at home with my kids, because it's those hugs that make me so happy. And I agree with that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really great stuff. I'm glad you have that experience. And what other experiences, like for a visitor, let's say going to the winery or to the tasting room, what can they expect to have out of that?
Well, at the moment, they can expect to get turned away from the tasting room because it's closed.
Yeah.
And so what I like to do is I like to host people in the vineyard, take them for a walk, show them everything, and then previous to this, we go to the tasting room, do a tasting. So a lot of times what it becomes more is buy bottles, check it out, and then you kind of go drink on your own, because we don't have a licensed space where people can taste there. But when they're friends and they're wine club members, it's not a paid experience. They're not paying to come. So like a wine club member would come, we'll give them walk through the vineyards, like, you guys want to have a glass of wine together? And we do. And so we hang out. So most of what I'm doing now is geared towards our members, because they can come up, they can taste, they've tasted all the wines already. And so it just becomes an experience where we hang out together and sip on wine and check the vineyards. And that's really what I'm focused on now, is making sure that these people that have been so supportive of us are the ones who are getting most of our support. But the people who are reaching out onto Instagram and things like that, they come out, they check out the vineyards. We make really cool stuff happen. Even though we don't have we can't legally like host a paid tasting or anything like that. There are plenty of other options. Before COVID, at Jam Cellars, we had awesome tastings. We had live music 3 nights a week. But what you get more than anything, I think, is a really down-to-earth experience. For far too long, there have been all these people that have tried to make wine inaccessible. They have wanted to hoard the knowledge and all their studies and make it really intimidating. And so you get these things, there's no way you can understand the terroir that goes into this. There's millions of years of family experience. There's dinosaur dung that is creating this. You cannot understand what I bring to you. It's $5,000 for you, but I give to you for 500. You're lucky today. And it's like, you're like, oh my God, I don't even know what you just said, but you're saying 500 and that's gotta be good. And people like, that happens to everybody. And so you end up in this, intimidating experience. And I don't want it to be that way. I want to talk about grapes. I want to talk about wines in ways that are truly accessible. And as we get into the wines that you have there, I love to do things like compare it to music, compare it to shapes, compare it to painting, compare it to things that are subjective. Tell somebody to pick a favorite shape. It's one of those things you really can't look at your buddy and be like, well, what's your favorite shape? Like, doesn't matter, right? It's like, just because they pick a triangle, if you pick a triangle too, like there's no reason to pick the same shape. Same thing with the same color, right? It would be annoying if somebody's like, well, I really love Tuscany taupe. It's like, what? But it's like, for the most part, I try and keep it subjective. I let people be correct. It's helpful to let people, I like to start where I tell them what I taste in a wine, and then I don't tell them what they should taste. I move on to the next wine, and then I don't tell them. Typically, they will still choose words that I chose the first time around. You'll see people start to branch out around the third one, but the power of suggestion is incredible when it comes to smell and to taste. And so I try to stay out of people's ways. I try to answer questions. I try to tell my stories. I've told it to you. And I try to just make it accessible. The pricing I want to be accessible. The flavor profiles rich and full and accessible. And myself accessible. I want people to be part of the story. And so I'm not sure where I lost the question in that, but I think I answered that and maybe two or three others with that meandering thought.
No, you answered it. I love that you're so hands-on and really care about getting in there, helping out your customers and making it accessible. That's something Bianca and I have been talking a lot at this podcast that we're getting off the ground. We really want to make this something that anyone can listen to. And, we don't want to be throwing around words that you have to read 8 books to really understand. We want everyone to be able to listen to it and really get a lot out of it and enjoy it and have fun listening. So
Absolutely.
That's what makes it useful, right? I mean, when you can empower people to make their own decisions about wine and to understand, when you get to be the one that opens those doors for them, it's such a blessing to be able to be the one that opened that door. Who cares what they do once they get through it? But the fact that before it was this sort of, just this locked space, and now it's yours. Hold on, I'm gonna grab a water real quick.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Bianca, do you want to get into going through some of these bottles that they sent us and taste some?
Definitely. So Nick and I have our bottles right in front of us. We have, of course, checked out the labels, taken lots of photos of them, and we've tried them. But we would love to talk to you about maybe your, recommendations for what you would pair with these wines, what makes them unique. Of course, we all have our own thoughts on that, but we'd love to start with, we could start with the rosé.
Absolutely. I do want to answer. I want to say one thing though, and that is, as hands-on as I am, there's no way I could do this without the other people who are involved in this company. Brett Adams, our consulting winemaker, John Chouchard, and Sander and the farming team, Steve Smith for the marketing ideas and the support. Everybody calls us the balloon and the anchor. I'm the balloon, if you hadn't figured that out already. And without him, I think long ago, I would have floated away, and so would have this company. So for the people who I'm not mentioning now, but Megan Vergara as well, who helps out in so many ways. So anyway, yes, very hands-on. There's nothing that I don't touch, but I am not a one-man show. And so I do want to make that clear, that without them, there'd be nothing here. Getting back into the rosé. So the rosé is something that we change every single year, not in terms of the flavor profile, but in terms of the components that go into it. This year, there's a lot of Malbec. The first one we ever made was Sangiovese. So we go and we taste and we find components that will create the exact same wine, or at least as close as possible. And then we also look at the market. What is the market doing? Everybody says in the past, they don't want sweet stuff. They want dry stuff. But then they go order a Diet Coke, and it's like, that's like the sweetest thing on the planet. You love sweet stuff. You just, somebody somewhere along the line told you sweet wines were bad, or you think that a sweet wine's a port. And so people love sweet wine. They do. They definitely do. Jammy sweet wines. That's what it's about. And so what we want to do is create something that answers both of those questions. And so as we're making a blend for the rosé, it is dry. It is not sweet. It does not have a high level of residual sugar. But what it does have is a lot of fruit. And at the end, it does have a kiss of sweetness. And the reason that we make sure that it has that kiss of sweetness is that that way it can pair with spicy foods. My mom is a chef, and I grew up, she owned a restaurant called Butterfield's, and I grew up tasting recipes and all those other things. And so for me, it's really important that it pairs with food, and I want it to be something that pairs with the right kinds of food. Rosé, in my mind, is a summertime wine. I know rosé all day, every day, all time of the year, no doubt. I'm with that. But at the same time, no better time than summertime. And summertime, I think spicy foods. You're thinking about spicy barbecue sauces, whether it be vinegar-based or, the brown sugar-based. You're talking about California versus, say, North Carolina, and then Texas, somewhere in between. Whether you're talking about fish tacos, you want to be able to put a little jalapeno on there. And if the wine doesn't have a hint of sweetness, as this one does, and so does our Sauvignon Blanc, it's going to muddle instead of accentuate. It's not going to cut through that spice. And so what you're talking about is a wine that I would describe as a dry, which is the opposite of sweet for people. As people always wondered, it's like, dude, it's wine. How do you mean it's wet, not dry? Dry means not sweet. And I always put that in things. Dry, in parens, not sweet. Because that's not fair to assume that people understand that dry means not sweet. It's not right. That's not the opposite thing. And so anyway, don't want to talk too much about that, but so that is the Vacation Rosé, and the idea there in the name and everything else is that, every day can be a little bit of an escape. Every day can be a vacation. Vacations don't just need to be 2 weeks on a plane, in a car, somewhere else. It can be part of your life, and this is your chance to take a little vacation, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of fun, something playful, a hint of sweetness, and hopefully at a price point at $17 that a lot of people can enjoy. You start looking at wines that, especially rosés, that sometimes are pushing $30 or $40, or rosés from other countries, and you don't know what you're going to expect. And it's like $40, that's $10 a glass. That's like going out to a restaurant. It's hard for people to get a decent buzz going or enjoy more than a half glass. And so we want to make our prices accessible, where you're in a space where you can have a $4 glass of rosé, or two, and that's still, I think about it. I mean, it's more than you spend on a soda, but I guess it's not a soda. So that is our Vacation Rosé. We make that with Brett Dennen, again, my favorite musician, great dude. And if you're looking for one of his songs, I'd start with Ain't No Reason. It is very telling in terms of who he is, but also I think just a sweet melody.
Awesome. I'm a big music guy. And also, you speak my language when you're talking about barbecue and everything. That's my bread and butter there. I love smoking foods. I got up at my girlfriend's lake house in New Hampshire. We moved into an apartment last year, so I lost my smoker. Can't have one here. So as soon as this summer, we were up there when this whole COVID broke out, and living there for about a month, I went to Lowe's. I bought a smoker, modded it all up, and I spent some time making some ribs and everything. Oh, I love it.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Well, that's this. I think you'll find our reds pair really well with that too, and we'll get to that when we get to it. All right, what's up next?
We can jump into the red now, the cab. I paired mine with a meatball sandwich tonight.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I love it when people pair it with what are seemingly simple but so flavorful foods. So now our red wines in general, what we do is we have a shorter period of maceration. And really important that you pronounce that well, or else things get really awkward. But yes, the maceration, as you probably know, is the period of time that after you crush the grapes, you take them off the vines, you crush them down, then you leave the skins on the juice. How long you leave the skins on the juice is the period of maceration. Now, I encourage all of you to take a grape sometime, take the skin off of it, eat the inside. It's going to be sweet and juicy and wet. And you're going to try the outside, and it's going to be tart and dry and tannic. That's where your tannins come from. That's where the feelings of a triangle when you take a sip come from. The two sides, your two cheeks and the top of your mouth. It's just like a triangle. That's that tartness, that puckeringness. That's where the complexity, the structure, all those flavors of a grape come from. Not all of those flavors, but many of them. So the longer you leave it on there, the more of those intense flavors you get. We have a very short period of maceration, half as long as the Napa Valley average and a quarter as long as some of the winemakers that are doing extended maceration. So a lot less influence. Then you have your oak choices, American oak being the strongest, and then going all the way down to lesser values. We choose French oak, which is probably the second strongest, and by strongest I mean impact in terms of flavor. Now we use French oak, we use medium plus toast, which means it's going to have a little bit of a toasty note to it. It's not going to be overly smoky, but toast is what it sounds like. It's that you toast something, it gets a little burnt, gets a little smoky. They actually toast it with a torch on the inside. So the oak is going to give you flavors of vanilla, and it's going to give you flavors of wood. Pretty simply put, right? The longer you put it in that barrel, the more flavor of wood you're going to get. We also only put, even our Cabernet, 9 to 12 months on new French oak, and then we move it into neutral. Neutral being a previously used barrel that isn't going to impart any flavor. That, again, is half of Napa Valley average and nearly a quarter of what other people are doing. So what that yields are wines that are richer, they are smoother, they are silkier, they're no less complex, but they also have flavors from the vineyard, really specific things, sense of place that aren't masked by overly tannic experiences or by overly oaked or more oaked experiences. And so what we get is a true expression of the earth, and we get something that's accessible, drinkable right away, or at least more quickly, depending on what your palate is. And it's got that richness, and it's got that creaminess, and I love that in a red wine. And it still has lots of structure. What we lose in that is longevity. So because our wines come out so well from the beginning, they hit their stride fast and stay good for a long time, maybe getting better. But at the 10-year mark, our wines will begin to start to get softer and more subtle and lose some of the pizzazz and perk. Whereas you're talking about the average Napa Valley wine, somebody who's making wines differently with a longer period of maceration, that's the skins on the juice, or more oak, then their wine's just going to be starting to hit its stride in 10 years. And so they've got the longevity. And, if you've got a ton of money and you can just let wines wait and you can barrel age them and you can keep them in bottle and you've got, all that, you can make that work. But for me, I don't want to sell somebody something and say, dude, this is going to be awesome in 10 years. It's like, what? That's really long time from now. I don't know that I'll still even be alive, much less drinking Cabernet, but cool. And so that's not what we do. And what we get also is really food-friendly wine. So that Napa Valley Cab, in its softness and smoothness, it doesn't come out punching, you know what I mean? It comes out subtle. It still has a lot of flavor. It's not a weak wine. It's got a lot of flavor, but it's softer. It's more subtle. And so we win a lot of gold medals for that same reason. And we get a lot of pairing opportunities because it doesn't beat up foods. It doesn't take over plates. It doesn't take over tasting experiences. And so that cab just got double gold, best in class, $50 to $100 at the East Meets West wine competition, which my understanding is the second largest competition in America. Double gold means it was a unanimous judge decision. Best in class means that after that it was chosen as the best wine in that price point. So that's awesome to get that. It's for a brand new wine. Why? Because everybody else's were just still so tannic, and here they find one that's subtle and balanced. So not a huge surprise. We win a lot of golds. And then you take that. We also just won a gold at the Sunset Wine competition. And so we do really well at competitions. Does that matter? It matters sometimes. It's cool to get the gold. I'd much rather have a friend or loved one tell me they love the wines and get a gold. But a lot of times for people who don't really understand wines yet or who haven't found what they love, it's really nice to have it substantiated. It's like, I think I'm going to like this. I'm going to buy it and try it. But what I do know when I buy it is that a group of educated, a panel of educated people in the wine world have chosen this as a winner. Who they are, I don't know. Why they did, I don't know. But at least I'm not alone. And that gives you a realistic sense of hope that it's going to be a good bottle. And that matters to me because that does speak to accessibility. When you start talking about point scores, though, it's like we do get high scores on some of our wines, but trying to tell it's like, this is 97 points. Like, who gave you that? It's like, well, my mom's best friend did. It's like, who cares? Like, one person tasted this and gave it a rating, and that is so subjective that we do submit sometimes for scores because we've got wines in Manhattan and we've got wines in Chicago and we've got places where that's important. But you get a 93 points versus a 97 points. And it's like, awesome. Who decided? And I have to tell you, if I'm in a really shit mood when I'm trying a wine, or if somebody's been a dick, I'm not going to like that wine. So if this taster comes home after getting in a car accident or, breaking up with his girlfriend or, having a waiter sneeze on his plate, dude, your wine's going to be an 84. He comes home after getting hit on by the cutest girl at the gym, dude, nothing but hundreds. So not only is it about the person's palate, who knows if yours is the same, it's about the experience they had. If they meet you at an event and you are spending a whole lot more time talking to somebody else instead of them, you give them the cold shoulder or you accidentally or just don't have time to give to them that you want, they later taste your wine. It's like, oh yeah, this tastes like submissive, like that jerk that makes them. This is a jerk wine. What does that mean? Well, it means you get an 82. And it's like, yeah, the blind tasting, my ass. It was a blind tasting until he looked at the bottle and then remembered that you're a jerk. So we'll see. Again, I know that scores are important. I know that people are impartial. I know that those people have done an amazing thing to support the industry. I do not hang my hat on scores. Or medals, but medals are more important because they make things more accessible. They don't scare people away because they don't. You can say a gold medal, people they know what that is. You say 97 points. It's like on a scale from 0 to 100. No, actually, 80 is about as low as a wine can possibly get, and that's one of those things. People don't know that you can't get below an 80. They don't give scores below 80. So really, you hear 97 points, you think of your math test. It's like, that's fucking awesome, man. I used to get 20% on my math test. This is no matter what. This is an 83. That's badass. No, it's not. It's a scale of 80 to 100. You basically just got a 3. You still failed. So, I mean, that's a lot about kind of my feelings about things, but what I love is making cabs that people can drink right away. They do get gold medals because that makes them more accessible and understandable for people, and gives them a basis to believe that they're going to be trying something that others like as well. And so that's the cab. I recommend pairing that with anything. I love pairing that cab and our reds in general with fish or any meat in a Mediterranean sauce. I love what rich tomato sauces do. And hey, a meatball sandwich with a nice rich tomato sauce, a little bit of cheese. There you go. So that rich red sauce, I think it can be done on halibut. I think with swordfish, it's awesome. Don't go crazy with the capers. It does weird stuff with red wines. But it's like there are so many things you can do. Now, there's a game that you get to play too. So now if you've got a wine and it's got a lot of cedar, a lot of oak, a lot of wood, or a lot of any kind of flavor, the question then becomes, do you want to smoke it with that same flavor so that the two will kind of combine and pair, or do you want to go a different direction and create a contrast? And that, as a chef or as somebody who's cooking, is a fun decision you get to make. If you can, do both. See what people think, see what you like better. But when you start pairing things, you get to decide who gets to shine. Do you want the wine to be smashed by this food because you just want to have wine to drink? Do you want the wine to smash the food so you make something really subtle and the wine takes over? Or do you find something that combines, or somewhere in between? There isn't a right way to do it, as long as you're not muddling. And where that happens is if you're in a situation where you've got something that's really dry going with something really spicy, like a dry red wine with something spicy, they're going to come together and just not get along. So there are ways that you'll learn pretty quickly don't go well together, and those are just usually flavor profiles that in any world don't go well together. Like ketchup on your cereal, probably not going to be a good idea. There's no way that that's going to be awesome. Like, I can't imagine that being awesome no matter what ketchup or cereal you've chosen. So you may absolutely make coffee. My beautiful wife has just wandered in. She's going to be
No
I'm in our
problem.
kitchen.
Coffee is essential. Coffee and wine.
Coffee and wine, not in the same glass.
Switching from the stronger red wine, we have this beautiful white wine, which in my opinion is great for the summer. I lean towards white blends and Sauv Blancs in the summer, and I think this one has great flavor notes. It's a very refreshing wine. So we'd love to hear more about this one from your perspective.
Absolutely. So the way that the genesis of that is, we made a Chardonnay that actually did really well. People who don't even like Chardonnay seem to like this, but none of us, Steve Smith, John Trouchard, and I, none of us were drinking that Chardonnay. We weren't bringing it to parties, and we had an agreement early on. As John's saying from his company was, never make a wine you wouldn't bring to a party. We found ourselves, none of us wanting to bring that wine or drink it. We said, all right, we got a problem here. What's everybody drinking? Well, we're drinking really crisp, acidic Sauvignon Blancs. Like, all right, let's go in that direction. So that was the building block for that. Right about that time, though, and currently, people aren't really buying Sauvignon Blanc, and they're not really buying Rosé. They instead are buying White Claw, and they're buying other lightly essenced alcoholic beverages. And so we don't want to change the market. We want to give the market what they want. So we weren't about to go out and find some intense grapes or make a wine. You know, a lot of people are actually oaking Sauvignon Blancs these days and doing these other really sort of they're doing things that add a lot of flavor to Sauvignon Blanc. And so what we did is we found grapes that were light and crisp, and we said, do we want to make a Sauvignon Blanc? And we said, nah, man, because we want to maybe change this next year. We may want to be able, maybe the market changes, maybe the palate changes, maybe we don't want to bring Sauvignon Blancs to a party anymore. And what we don't want to do is end up in a situation where the wine is similar and equally refreshing and wonderful, but because we've changed the blend, we have to call it something else. Then you get all these people who are pissed off that you're not making their favorite wine anymore. So instead of calling it a Sauvignon Blanc, which we could, because the wine you're drinking is 99% Sauvignon Blanc and 1% Muscat, we could call it a Sauvignon Blanc more than 85%. We chose to stick with white blend because next year, I don't think it's going to be the same. I don't think everybody's still going to be buying White Claw and Truly. I think if they are, they're going to be buying new flavors. Are they going to be sweeter? Are they going to be drier? Are they suddenly going to be incorporating flavors like hazelnut? So suddenly people are starting to look for almond and hazelnut flavored beverages instead of the raspberry and other flavors that are currently popular. Well, I don't know, but we in a white blend can now make that change. But what we will not change is that it's crisp, it's refreshing, it's acidic, it's got flavors of citrus. And what we also love about it is that while the flavor profile stays to that citrus and that minerality, the nose to it, the aroma is much more tropical, pineapple, guava, other fruits like that. And again, call them a porch pounder, call it whatever you want, summer sipper. This is, a summertime wine. It's $18. And so we've got a deal on our website right now. It's called the Summertime Trio. And that is our California Red Blend, which is the Syrah, the Zin, and the Cab Franc that I was talking about, the white blend and the rosé. Those three, like bring those to a barbecue, you cannot go wrong. All of them are going to pair well with almost any food that you choose. They're all going to be awesome straight out of the cooler. Even the red blend is nice for chilled. It brings up the acid, but on a hot day, by the time you get it out of the cooler and walk over and talk to your buddy for a minute, it's going to be 55 degrees. You're the typical red drinking anyway. So that is an easy drinking summer sipper that's all about refreshing, crisp, summertime fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just tried all three. That white was delicious too, especially.
Hell yeah. I'm glad you like it, man.
Yeah. I think that's all the time we're going to keep you tonight. I don't want to keep you too long. I had so much fun talking to you. You're awesome. I can't wait to check out the music that you suggested.
Yes, please do. Since you're a music head, if you haven't heard of him, check out Ziggy Albert's Laps Around the Sun. While you're cooking up tonight, throw that on. I think it will make you really happy. The guy's doing everything himself. He doesn't have a record label. He's traveling in a van. He's picking up individual musicians in each town and working, or at least in each region, and they're opening up for him, hit or miss, I think, but just killing it. The other musicians I'd recommend that we work with are Andrew McMahon. He's got some great songs out there. Amy Hanai-Ali'i, if you want some Hawaiian vibes. Brett Dennen, obviously Ain't No Reason was the song that I picked, but Wild Child is another good one. But you can go by that. And then Dresden Wine by Andrew Ripp. We made a wine called Dresden with that guy, and he's on a mission to change the world and make it a better place. So check out the song called Dresden Wine by Andrew Ripp. I'm sure I'm forgetting people that we make wines with, some other great stuff, Van and Wynn, whatever it may be, but check it out. And thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it. In times like these, it is really hard to reach new people. There's a lot of noise on Instagram. There's a lot of noise in general. And people like you who are taking the time to let us tell our stories, who are getting them out there, who are getting us in front of new people, who are genuinely caring enough to try the wines and to make these appointments and do this, you're making a big difference in the industry. And I am truly grateful for you and for what you're doing.
We really appreciate that. And one last thing, where can our listeners find you guys on social and online?
Online, smithdevereux.com. That's spelled Smith as you expect. Devereux is DEVEREUX.com. You can find us on Instagram at Smith Devereux Wines or Ian_Devereux_White. And those are the best ways to find us. And if you reach out to Smith Devereux or to me personally, you will get a response very quickly, and I will be the one who's ultimately the one guiding you through your purchase or anything else. My email is all over the website. Do not hesitate to reach out to me directly. I love communicating with people. I love helping you decide what wines to buy. I love helping you after you buy them to pair them or to talk about what they are. It's all about developing relationships, and I'm here to do that and to help people decide what I think will help them. So I'm here to help people buy wine. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. I can't wait to talk to you again in the future, see what you got going on in the future. All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. You too.
Be sure to follow us on social at Uncorked Corner and on the blog at uncorkedcorner.com for a taste of more food and beverage content.
And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thanks for listening.